well, joining us now is good friend of the Rebel, Tom Murat. So, Tom, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. I had another steak tonight for dinner. The
Yes,
second
I
time
save
in
another one.
5 years. Yes, yes.
Go easy, Tom. Go easy. But I'm very happy to see that you're filling yourself up with healthy, reliable animal protein. I wanted to
And
ask
it's
you
Alberta
because
beef.
yes, even better, even better. Um, Tom, I think you're described, and I think you describe yourself as a convoy participant. I don't think you've
Mhm.
ever described yourself as an organizer. You were
Right.
more of a logistics guy on the ground.
Mhm.
Um, I know that I've been asked, and I think you've been asked too, so
Yeah.
this is a great opportunity to clear this up.
Yeah.
You've been asked why no charges have been brought against you, even though
Yes.
you were prominent in the
Mhm.
convoy. So I don't think anybody can really ever know why they weren't charged, except maybe
Mhm.
they weren't breaking the law. But there could
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
other reasons. So I'm going to ask you to speculate. Why haven't you been charged?
Well, it is a great question, and I do get this question quite often, and I know Danny Bulford also gets this question quite often, and I think the truth of the matter comes down to this. People like myself and Danny Bulford, and then some of the other veterans that went to Ottawa to assist the convoy. We went there because, within our communities, whether you're, currently serving or you're retired or whatever the deal, you're trained to be somebody who does things, to organize, to just be doers for your community. And veterans and retired police, active military, they get involved in their communities, in their churches. They do fundraising, they do sports with children, they volunteer, and so we play an active role. So I think, I tried really hard, and I know Danny Bulford as well tried really hard to develop a strong relationship with the local law enforcement in Ottawa during the time of the convoy. And we were always consistently trying to work with them to make sure that what we were doing was safe and as responsible as could be. And I think that was something that was recognized by the local law enforcement. They said, hey, how can we probably target these guys when the entire time they've been working with us to try to make sure, like I was, it was very important to me. I mean, I've said this before, during the convoy, my own son, where he lives in his hometown, went to the hospital in the middle of the night in an ambulance. This is a normal thing in my family. Okay. So it's a very important thing for me personally. And I wanted to make sure that nobody in the city of Ottawa was ever prevented from going to a hospital, or emergency services were ever prevented from getting through. We achieved that. And we heard testimony even during this inquiry that we actually did do that. And for anyone to say otherwise it's categorically false. And we know this, and we've talked to the police. There was testimony about it. This never happened. So when we get attacked, for example, where people say, oh, you couldn't get to your hospital or you couldn't get to your appointment, that's an outright lie. And to be clear, there's no hospitals anywhere near where the convoy was actively participating or going on. But to get back to the other question, we just, military and police, we naturally work together. And so when they knew that we were trying to reciprocate a good, strong relationship to be safe and responsible, I think the police recognized that and said, you know what, there's nothing good that can come of making an example of these specific people, right? And what's really frustrating for me is I've been listening to the testimony the last couple of days where they keep saying, military were involved, military involved. And what you can tell, it's very clear to me, is there's a narrative, there's a subplot that's being laid out right now, and that's
Mhm.
why they keep bringing out former military, former police. They're angling for this really bizarre narrative that they've been trying to push forward. They were talking about military being at Coventry. It's not true.
Yeah.
I know the composition of the people that were there. I mean, you had electricians, millwrights, carpenters, or construction company.
Mhm.
It wasn't being run by military. And here's another thing that I want to say about military people. There's a lot I want to say about it, but this kind of does get to the root of the matter, I think. I did staff college as an Army officer, which means that's brigade level stuff. Like that's a lot of soldiers in a battle space in a military context. Anybody who had done staff college, even maybe a second, third year captain, could have easily frustrated the law enforcement agencies in the city of Ottawa beyond belief. Like we could have frustrated them at every turn. But you want to know the honest truth? We knew we could. I knew we could. I knew it would be easy, but I purposely did not. I purposely did not take steps to actively frustrate law enforcement because I didn't want them to get to the point where they thought, if you're going to put me in checkmate every chance you get, that's going to frustrate me and I'm going to invoke something awful. It bought us 3.5 weeks, but really it would have been extremely easy for us to do that. And we all knew it, but we just chose not to do it. We chose a nonviolent path at every opportunity we had. That's not what we were there to do. And if you look at the military that started to congregate there, we're talking about people that later on have gone and joined an organization. Some of us started called Veterans for Freedom. And this came out after the Convoy. Veterans for Freedom was after the Convoy. But we all met at the Convoy, and we've grown over 1,000 people in this organization, and it grows every day. And we've got some very talented, very skilled people that understand military operations, intelligence, how to gather it, how to consume it, how to, take steps to protect themselves in case there's other people out there that don't like the fact that you're active, that you have information. They're kind of framing this narrative, right? We understand how that game is played. And we're not fools. I mean, obviously we prepare for those kinds of stupid eventualities, right? But the fact of the matter is, Veterans for Freedom and everybody that went to Ottawa, we have so many veterans involved that were given methylquin, that trusted the government, trusted the military, and now there's lawsuits going on. Even Romeo Dallaire is part of the class action
then we
lawsuit.
gave them, by the way, then we gave them Moderna. So we gave we gave them all, like the entire military, if they received the vaccine, they were inoculated with Moderna.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then it's revealed that Moderna is going to give exactly that demographic of people myocarditis.
Yes. And then, to top it all off, like we have all these amazing soldiers. And even during the time when the height of the mandates, we found out through Veterans for Freedom, like the community was talking, we found out that in places like Petawawa and Edmonton, if you were not vaccinated, you were being put in the pipeline for a 5F release from the military. You're being kicked out.
Yes.
And these are combat veterans being kicked out. And they made those soldiers in the wintertime last year stand out in modular tents. And in Edmonton, they were making them wear their DEUs, their dress uniforms, and then they took away the heaters. It's blatant harassment. And I think anybody who was involved in those decisions or in that chain of command that was forcing their unvaccinated soldiers to stand out in the cold winter in a tent and not allow them inside the building with vaccinated soldiers, that is disgusting. That is absolutely disloyal, disgusting, unbecoming behavior of any commanding officer of a unit that would do that to their soldiers. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, that to me is something that they should be brought up on charges and relieved of command. But the organization has grown exponentially, and we work with lawyers all the time. We're trying to assist Canadian Forces members in their fight to be kicked out of the military. So we work with lawyers. We talk to lawyers all the time, not just the ones here for the commission, but there's a phenomenal lawyer out in Alberta that we've been working with. She's been suing the government for all these COVID restrictions for quite some time on behalf of soldiers, right? And so when I listened today to the Minister of National Defense get up on there and talk today, a lot of these memories had been coming back. Like, one of the reasons why, veterans got involved, it was because of the deliberate steps of the federal government who mandated a forced medical experiment against their own people again. And a lot of
Again.
people pushed back. A lot of people pushed back and said no. And so their reaction was to take punitive steps. So now you're looking at soldiers that, for example, one highly trained helicopter pilot who's a member of V4F. To get a pension, you got to have 25 years. He had over 21 years. And now he's being forced out, forfeiture of a pension, no more benefits for the rest of his life. Why? Why? Because the Canadian military failed to respect informed consent or bodily autonomy on something that has not yet passed phase 3 clinical trials and is under an interim order. So, you know, I just listening to the Minister of National Defense today, it sickens me. It absolutely sickens me to listen to the demeanor, the attitude. But I will say, I give her a couple of points on some of the things that I believe were in alignment with you know, what happened during the convoy, which kind of goes back to the original point of your question, and maybe is why didn't you get charged? Which was because there was, you know, and I'm trying to complete the circle here, and I may have turned it into a pentagon. I'm sorry.
You took the long way. You took the long way around.
60% chance of getting there, if you ask the OPP. So the issue really is. Now I lost my train of thought. That's okay. Maybe I'll come back to it. I'll let my co-host say something.
Speaking of Anita Anand, speaking of the defense minister, I'd like to throw to clip 7, if we can get that going. And that was when she comments on Minister Lametti and Minister Mendicino's, those text messages where they're joking about bringing in a tank into Ottawa.
Okay, let's stop here. Maybe we can find my tweet. It might even be my pin tweet. And I have quit using the word snake in my tweets. I've used the shorthand of just the snake emoji because it's Snake Week down at the Public Order Emergency Commission. Mm-hmm. These two snakes, the Justice Minister and the Public Safety Minister, they say it's a joke, but even if it were a joke, there's the snake emojis. We've got David Lametti and Marco Mendicino, the Public Safety Minister. These two snakes, maniacs, wouldn't give Alberta CAF heavy haul equipment, which we know is stationed at CFB Edmonton. Anand said, oh, maybe there wasn't enough equipment to give them. What? They just needed it for an afternoon. But that we know that's not true. You can go to the base and look at it right now. You could just go look at the equipment. It's there. I'm from the area. We see it driving around all the time. It goes between Wainwright and Edmonton constantly. But anyways, these two snakes, they won't give Alberta heavy haul equipment from the CAF, but they were going to deploy tanks or joked about it, however you read this. But I think it's atrocious to joke about doing the old maple syrup Tiananmen Square treatment in Ottawa. They were going to deploy tanks as early as February 2nd to deal with the traffic snarl in Ottawa. One of them says you need to get the police to move. I don't think that they can do that. You're not supposed to direct the police government. And the CAF if necessary. Too many people are being seriously adversely impacted by what is an occupation. I'm getting out as soon as I can. So he's not even sticking around to put up with it. He's like, the traffic's bad. I'm going to Montreal. And then he continues to say, people are looking to us, you, for leadership and not stupid people. Now, I'm not sure. I think he's calling Mark Carney stupid and possibly Catherine McKenna. I think Kath is Catherine McKenna, who's an Ottawa resident. But I'm not sure. I mean, naturally, when somebody says there's a not a very smart Catherine around, I'm just going to assume it's her. And then he says, my team. And then to wit, the other ghoul responds, how many tanks are you asking for? I just want to ask Anita how many we've got on hand. And he says, I reckon one will do. Now, maybe they're serious, maybe they're not. They invoked the Emergencies Act, which would allow them to do these things. So to chalk this up as a joke, I mean, you literally just invoked the Emergencies Act. So I'm not sure you were joking. But even if you were, I'm not sure I want two ministers of the crown joking about having their own little Tiananmen Square in Ottawa because they don't like the bouncy castles.
Yeah, I never took that text to be a joke at all. No. There's no tone of a joke within that. I think that they were doing actually serious staff checks with each other. Like, is this something possible? As early as February 2nd, right?
Yeah.
That's a little bit,
that's like 3-4 days into the convoy. They're like, we should probably tank man these people.
Yeah. And I read that, and I'm sorry, but I see where their mind automatically went. And Selene and I were sitting in the audience, and I think around 4:00-ish, I couldn't take it anymore. I could not take the extreme arrogance that just evaporates off of the Attorney General. And to see some of the comments was unbelievably frustrating and disturbing. To hear him again, just like we talked about with Mendocino yesterday. Like, is he talking about Canadians, or is he talking about the Taliban? I can't tell. I think he talked more politely about the Taliban.
Yeah, there are brothers. If you ask that not very bright lady who used to be the MP in Peterborough, whose name escapes me right now. Thank God she's no longer an MP. She called them her brothers. But, it is true. That has been one of the reoccurring themes here, that our fellow Canadians who took to our nation's capital to protest because no one would listen to them for 2 years, they left their lives behind and drove all the way to the nation's capital to protest in the middle of winter. And they are treated like foreign invaders instead of just Canadians who have a right to be there like everybody else, who might be a little rough around the edges, but that's how I am too. So I don't care. But that's how they're treated. Like, they're just treated like they're like the Mongolian hordes coming into China, and we need to build a wall to keep them out in perpetuity. That's how they're being treated. And I find it just so offensive. And I don't like to be offended by anything, because that means you can't keep control of your emotions. But that really, really bothers me. Sorry, Selene, I took this over from you, and you were throwing to clip 7, I think. Sorry. I'll shut up.
No, you're good. You're good.
That was made in jest. Second, I have already provided my comments relating to the fact that the Canadian Armed Forces is the force of last resort. Therefore, we were not considering deploying tanks in any number.
And Minister Lametti earlier on in testimony to this commission wrote the exchange off as a joke between friends. Do you think this is a joke?
I take no part of my role as Minister of National Defense as something in jest. Obviously, I am very concerned and was very concerned not only about the situation in Canada, but about the global strategic situation that we all find ourselves in. And so I am very concerned to make sure that we are making decisions with full information. And I know that's the case with Minister Lametti, as well as the other colleagues around the table. This was a very difficult time, and we were all doing our very best in our respective portfolios.
Right. But at the same time, on February 2nd, just a few days after the arrival of the protesters in Ottawa, this was the sort of joke that was considered funny among your cabinet colleagues, wasn't it?
I was actually not in Canada at the time. I was in Europe, as previously indicated, trying to launch Canada's response to a potential further invasion of Ukraine by Russia. I will say that I know that my colleagues take their work extremely seriously.
Does cabinet solidarity require you to find this joke funny? I'm sorry, that was a little frivolous.
I loved it.
There was one other part. Yeah. There was one other part of that exchange where Kittredge says, "That's Kittredge with the JCCF for those of you at home."
Rob Kittredge. Yeah.
Rob Kittredge, and he says, "Do you agree with Lametti that just one tank would have been enough to deal with the Canadians gathered in their nation's capital to express their discontent with the government?" And she says, "Oh, it was in jest." And then he asked, "Was this the kind of joke that your cabinet colleagues found funny?" And then she says, "Well, we take our job seriously." So she's saying, like, literally in the same breath, it was a joke, but this is no joking. So which one is it, lady? Are you joking about running over Canadians, or are you serious about running over Canadians? Both are bad. Both are bad. Just pick one, please.
Well, and I mean, in truth, she hasn't necessarily been operationally focused, especially if she has allowed the prime minister and the rest of cabinet to systematically eject Canadian Forces members who are fully trained and will not partake in the violation of informed consent. And yet now they're critically short in the middle of a situation that they're facing overseas, right? So that's an interesting thing. But, I listened to her testimony quite closely today, and she had rehearsed quite a lot of talking points. So when Rob asked those questions, she was actually regurgitating a talking point almost verbatim of what she had previously stated early on.
Yeah, I just want to actually include something in there because I wasn't even the only person that openly exclaimed this in the audience. It's like I'm explaining this like I'm watching a circus, and it feels like that at this point. But she literally had her phone in one hand and she was just scrolling, and you could just see her eyes darting back and forth. And there's only a couple times where you could tell that her answers actually weren't that put together, and that's actually the only times that she didn't have her phone in her hand.
Yeah, she was very scripted in her responses 100%. To most things.
And I don't know. That's tough to watch because it just shows me like there's no fairness. I would assume that phones usually wouldn't be allowed in court proceedings. If you're up on the stand giving a testimony, it's like taking a test and you have notes. I get it, but you're not allowed to bring your phone with you.
Yeah.
So I don't care if you have notes or.
Who needs a phone when you can just say, I don't think that question's relevant, so I'm not answering it. When she did to the government of Alberta lawyer. Like, what the hell is going on here? Can you do that? I guess so, because she did.
Yeah, it was really difficult to watch that exchange. And I have to say, I think that's the best cross that I've seen from Rob Kittredge. Like, he was right on the money with that cross exam. And the way he was making the eye contact in a very assertive way, you could tell she was highly uncomfortable with the question itself. And she couldn't answer the question from her own words. She had to revert to talking points because she was very nervous about the answer she was about to give, because they knew that they got caught. They tried to brush it off like a joke, but everybody in the room knew that it wasn't a joke. It was a staff check to see if they could actually pull off what was being suggested.
Well, speaking of a really good cross from Rob Kittredge, I don't think that we have the clip actually lined up, but when he asked her more or less to agree or disagree with the fact that if she didn't support the invocation, the invocation of the Emergencies Act, then she more or less would have to voluntarily step down from her position as minister.
Cabinet solidarity. So
exactly.
that
was extremely
that concept is called cabinet solidarity. So not only have they not waived cabinet confidence, which means the communications between ministers are privileged and no one will hear about them, but cabinet solidarity has not been waived either, which means that you can't break ranks with cabinet. And if you do, you sort of have to voluntarily step down from your role. And I think Anita Anand likes being a female defense leader. It makes her, she's checking a lot of social justice boxes by being there.
He certainly is. Like, I'd like to know how she's qualified to do that job. And I'll give you an example why. The last Minister of National Defense was actually a reserve lieutenant colonel in, infantry reserve soldier who had multiple overseas deployments, and he was also a police officer in his former career. But inside Justin Trudeau's own party, you've got a member of parliament. His name is Andrew Leslie. He was the commander of the Canadian Army. So how is it that Andrew Leslie is just basically this guy with hardly any portfolio at all, and she is now running the military when her focus is to put pronouns on people's signature blocks in their emails, as opposed to making sure that Canada has a fighting force that is ready to meet, international challenges in terms of defense. She's not. She can't even talk her way through a public inquiry without talking points.
Well, it goes without saying that this is Justin Trudeau's Canada. And even if she did or didn't disagree, I have the suspicion, I have intuition, if I may just say, that not all the ministers obviously fully agreed. Actually, it was revealed that during her statement, she didn't even specify if she agreed with the invocation of the Emergency Act. Of course, that changed today.
She claimed,
but
So go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to touch on Leslie for a second there.
Sure.
In fairness, Andrew Leslie was unelected in 2019 after he announced that he would support Vice Admiral Norman's.
Yep.
He would testify for the defense in that breach of trust trial. So he was turfed.
I thought I saw him sitting in the audience. I could have swore I saw him sitting in the audience recently when that one Liberal MP passed out. Remember 2 weeks ago she passed out in the Commons?
Oh, he could have been. He could have been.
He was there right in front of her. Yeah.
I don't know.
But
I was
of course,
there.
hey, you know, the Admiral was actually vindicated. He beat those allegations and was offered a full reinstatement, but I think he took his retirement. And by the way, many members of the Canadian military helped the Admiral crowdfund for his legal defense, which he won, and then turn around and reimbursed or offered reimbursement to all the soldiers, airmen, and sailors that supported his legal defense. He asked them if they would like to be reimbursed or where their money he'd like to donate it, right? But this is somebody who Justin Trudeau took off the chessboard in the Canadian military. Why? Because of another ethics deal involving ships and Justin Trudeau's friends, and he won. Yeah, but you know, to kind of circle back to the original question, I'm really sorry. I thought I'd take the long way around. Keith Wilson was navigating. I took the long way around, and this is the important point. If the commission comes back and says, "Hey," the Emergency Act was necessary. It was if the commission comes back and says, yeah, it's valid, it should have been invoked. There's a good chance I could still be charged, and I'm not the only one. There's a possibility, right? And this is I think a valid concern of mine, and some of the others like Danny. I would assume, I haven't talked to Danny, but
for sure.
If they come back and say, yeah, the Emergency Act was warranted, next thing you know, Tom and Danny and other people are going to get paraded around this country like public enemy number one. Why? Because they've got to put a cherry on top of their big heap of crap cake. And so, you know, obviously we're not stupid. We've been preparing for this for quite some time. We're not going to go down without a fight. We're aware of the play. So I'm not overly worried. I mean, it's a long shot, but you know, we know what we're doing. We play the long game just as much as other opponents, right? This is what the government has trained us to do. So I'm not really worried about it overall.
I'll cover your trial like it's the OJ trial.
Perfect.
I will.
Yeah.
We'll take turns.
Exactly. But I mean, is it going to happen? No, I don't think it's going to happen, but is it inside the realm of possibility with this current government that nobody even recognizes as left, right, center, or anything? It's just its own government beast on its own. It doesn't fit into a political spectrum.
They're just doing their own
in
thing.
This century.
Yeah.
In this century, maybe, you know, 80 years past, it might fit into a government model of the past. But you know, nothing would surprise me with these guys.
The only ideology is power at all costs. Whatever that looks like. They don't care.
Well, it's done through talking points in media and narrative. That's the most effective tool. You know, and during the convoy, I had made mention actually on I think the final live stream event that I had done on the 19th. And I mentioned, you know, Justin Trudeau, you just got your Tiananmen Square moment. If that's what you wanted, you just got the moment. And now we find out that they were actually joking about it, making reference to it, joking about it.
If they were joking.
If
it was
joking.
Yeah, they weren't joking. They weren't joking.
Now, I think it is 9:17 where you guys are at. It's been a very long day for you. And I know that there's a case of beer that I bought sitting in the fridge for you guys to drink after a very long day. So I want to thank you guys for the hard work that you're putting in the commission. Tom, I know this is probably difficult for you to relive at some points. Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah. Selene,
what frustrates me, what frustrates me is that 6 weeks ago, we heard all this testimony from Lamenti and Mendocino that was proven false. 6 weeks ago,
Yeah.
but they're still talking about it like it's fact.
Yeah.
Surprise!
It's
Canadian
very
government.
they're gaslighting us. They think we're all hard of remembering. Anyway, I was trying to wrap up the stream so
Sorry.
that you guys could go and have a beer. So I will let you go, Selene. Thank you. You've got a very busy day tomorrow. We've got PMO staffers and Krista Freeland. So very busy day full of lies, I imagine. A lot of turd polishing, I bet, going on tomorrow. And Tom, I'm sure you're going to be sitting there. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you cough. And I know you're fighting a bit of a bug this whole time, and you're in the, you're in the audience just as much as our team is, and I think at this point we just consider you part of the crew. You come to the live stream probably 4 nights out of 5. So thanks for doing that.
Anytime.
I look forward to seeing what is going on tomorrow. I may or may not be the lead journalist. I bet I'm going to get roped into it. So that's okay too, because I get to talk to you guys. Thanks to everybody behind the board there in the Airbnb. Thanks to everybody in the studio in Toronto who's also working hard. Efron, Olivia, I know you're there. Thanks to everybody who tunes in every week and every night, by the way, to watch the breakdown. We know that you are looking to us to give you truthful analysis because we are not politically contaminated by Justin Trudeau's money. So I appreciate the trust that you put in us. And as David Menzies always says, stay sane.